Okay, so I apologize in advance for any animals that you might hear meow or bark. So the three major concepts that I was going to talk about were the overview of leadership theory from chapter 2, deconstruction and reconstruction, and the essential themes of critical social theory. Those were the three big things that I picked up on about impacting critical social theory. The first, the overview, how the way history of or evolution of leadership theory is thought about. For me, it stood out because it can marginalize minority groups and leaves out important contributions to the body of leadership. This struck a chord with me because my full-time role is working as an investigator in our Equal Opportunity and Title IX office. So my job is pretty much to ensure the university is being equitable, including those groups of people who fall within protected classes, such as those related to gender, race, sexual orientation, gender identity. The second piece with deconstruction and reconstruction, talked about in both chapters. Basically, what I picked up is applying these methods to theories helps us critically analyze them. And we need to see the theory's deficiencies or constraints, call attention to them, and propose ways to elevate that theory to be accessible and representative of more than just one dominant group. And ultimately, hopefully, that will support the evolution of leadership theories. And then the central themes of critical social theory being stocks of knowledge, ideology, and hegemony, and social location. Stocks of knowledge are assumptions we have about or have that affect how we view, interpret, and experience the world. That one reminded me a lot of similar concepts that I learned about in my undergrad degree as a psychology student in our cognitive psychology classes, the way we try to quickly assess and file certain ideas in our mind. And obviously that can have certain impediments to it. Ideology and hegemony, I took this as what influenced stocks of knowledge or filled out those typifications in stocks of knowledge that people use which benefits a certain segment of the population. And then finally, social location. Who we are determines what knowledge we have access to, which leads to the amount of power we have in our position. This was a lot of information for me to process through reading the chapters, and I definitely had to take some time reading them. And then when, at the end of chapter 3, when it was talking about implicit leadership theory and he was walking through ways to deconstruct and reconstruct and going back to all of what I just talked about, I kept having to flick back to earlier pieces of the book to really understand it and remind myself about what those concepts were to fully understand what he was critiquing. So hopefully practice leads to muscle memory. And then finally, how did what we learned change our perceptions and set the context for better understanding leadership within educational settings? As I was putting the concepts together, reading through it, it just provided another perspective for me to think about and to use at work and then in my interactions in my daily life. And as I mentioned, certain concepts resonated more with me just based on my own experiences. So the examples the authors had putting concepts into context would seem familiar either because of what I was doing right now in my job or just understanding it more from my background in psychology. And Dugan talked a lot about disrupting certain structures, and I agree with that, especially when they marginalize certain groups in the population. And then hopefully when I commit these concepts to muscle memory, I can use them in my own work to recognize systems that negatively impact students and faculty and staff at the university.